He pushed Uber out of China, then he got too big for Beijing. CNN, Hong Kong CNN Business. Chang Wei built a world-class ride-hailing app that not even Uber could keep up with in China. But Didi's risky play for expansion and dominance, culminating in the disastrous IPO this summer, has caused it to run off pole of Beijing. And now the company's top executive faces a difficult balancing act, placating regulators at home and investors abroad while fending off fierce competition. Chang, 35, who also goes by Will Chang, is the youngest entrepreneur heading one of China's biggest tech firms. He has been busy in the 9 years since Didi was founded. Chang has knocked out a flurry of powerful opponents and amassed nearly 160 million monthly active users by the first quarter of this year in China alone, nearly double the amount of users that Uber has worldwide. But the ride-hailing behemoth is now in the precarious spot. It's one of the most prominent targets of China's sweeping crackdown on tech and private enterprise that has no end in sight. Its stock has fallen more than 40% since regulators began probing the company, erasing $34 billion in market value. Earlier this summer, Chinese regulators banned Didi from app stores as part of the investigation into its data privacy and collection practices, threatening its future growth. The pressure could dismantle Didi's stranglehold on the Chinese market unless the company can appease the ruling Chinese Communist Party. Didi declines to make Chang available for an interview, and the company did not respond to questions about Chang or its business. A swift and explosive rise. Before he founded Didi in 2012, Chang was a sales manager at Alibaba, starting as an entry-level salesperson making the equivalent of amount of $200 a month. He rose quickly and in 7 years became the company's youngest regional manager. Chang said he created Didi because he was fed up with being unable to get a taxi during a business trip, according to a profile published in June in the Business Times, a Chinese financial news outlet. The pain led him to think about how to fix the problem. I was thinking, how about creating the ride-hailing apps so there can be fewer poor losers that can soak in the rain, Chang said, recalling a depressing experience in Beijing when he couldn't hail a cab for hours during a storm, according to the media outlet. Chang founded Didi with just 100,000 yuan, roughly $15,000 of its own money, and another 700,000 yuan, roughly $110,000, from Yang Gang, an angel investor who supervised Chang during his tenure at Alibaba. Wang's initial investment was worth $1 billion when Didi went public. Didi learned to navigate the regulatory gray zone for ride-hailing services in China. Like its tech peers Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, Didi's rise has been swift. When Chang founded Didi, ride-hailing was still a regulatory gray area in China, and taxis controlled the market. Cab shortages were common as government-approved taxi operators lobbied to limit supply of licenses. That fueled a boom in ride-hailing apps like Didi. Unlike traditional taxis, ride-hailing companies don't require expensive and difficult to obtain licenses for cars and drivers. Before the industry was regulated 5 years ago, many cities accused ride-hailing apps like Didi of running illegal taxi businesses. Didi argues that it was only providing a platform to connect passengers with cars owned by rental agencies or other third parties. Didi had learned to navigate this gray zone. It even reimbursed drivers for the penalties authorities imposed on them for breaking local laws to keep Didi drivers on the road and retain customers. China's central government at the time encouraged rapid innovation, and ride-hailing was never explicitly banned in China. And on July 28, 2016, ride-hailing was finally legalized in China. Days later, Didi acquired Uber China. In a letter to employees after buying his great rival, Chang and company president Jae-In Liu hailed the legalization as a milestone. They said the company's service had been suspended more than 30 times in various places, and that countless drivers had their cars detained and were fined, but added that the country had finally embraced the dawn of reform. Reform and innovation always come with a cost, they wrote. The renovation of smart travel has just begun. We want to create a world-class tech company. After 2016, Didi continues to cement its command over Chinese ride-hailing, and by 2018 controlled 90% of the Chinese market. That year, the company expanded to Australia, Brazil, and Mexico as it set its sight on customers outside of its home country. Its rapid ascent included controversy, however. In 2018, 2 women passengers were killed by drivers working for Hitchi, forcing Didi to suspend the operations at its carpooling offshoot. The killings led to government pressure on Didi to share real-time data with authorities about its vehicles and drivers, an arrangement the company had long resisted. In late 2018, it finally made concessions. Trouble with the regulators. That pressure foreshadowed Didi's troubles this year. Beijing had taken a sharp turn against the internet firms that it fears had grown too big and powerful, resulting in a massive crackdown that had affected tech, education, entertainment, and other industries. Under President Xi Jinping, the Communist Party is moving aggressively to rein in unfettered private enterprise and send a clear signal that Chinese organizations must work in lockstep with the government. The companies that had grown too big too quickly will be kept in check to ensure they are aligned with the government's priorities. Didi ran into trouble as it pushed ahead with a $4.4 billion initial public offering in New York, apparently despite evidence Beijing was unhappy. Regulators had expressed concerns about the data security and suggested Didi delay its listing, according to Bloomberg. Chang went ahead, but like other Didi executives, he kept a low profile during the IPO that fell on the eve of the 100th anniversary of China's Communist Party. He didn't ring the opening bell or broadcast the news news on the company's Chinese social media account. Chang and Didi's other executive kept a low profile during the company's US IPO, skipping the bell ringing fanfare altogether. Just days later, the Cyberspace Administration of China banned Didi from app stores, preventing the company from signing up any new users. The Internet watchdog accused the company of illegally collecting and mishandling user data, a trove of locations and routes containing sensitive information about Chinese traffic rules and citizens. From the government perspective, Didi has become too big to control. Obviously, it wants to limit Didi's growth in China, said Tu Lei, founder and managing director for Beijing-based consultancy Sino Auto Insight. The government also wants to make an example of Didi that no one can be out of the step with the party. Didi also faced anger and suspicion from investors abroad. American lawmakers and investors have called on the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission to investigate Didi's IPO fiasco. Eurasia Group analysts said such demands will at the very least intensify a political pressure on the regulator to enforce a recent law that prevents companies that refuse to open their books to U.S. accounting officials from trading on U.S. stock exchanges. To many analysts, Chang's decision to press on with the IPO appeared confusing or reckless. No Chinese company can openly challenge the Chinese Communist Party and expect leniency, said Alex Capri, a research fellow at the Heinrich Foundation. Didi is too big and too powerful for its own good, and it has already crossed the threshold with China's leadership. The company may have had some justification in the form of investor pressure to list the company, as it had raised billions of dollars from venture capitalists. Another reason for urgency was the new data security law taking effect in September that requires all Chinese entities to obtain government approval from providing China-based data to foreign judicial or law enforcement agencies, according to a Winston Ma, an adjunct professor at the New York University School of Law. A cutthroat market. Didi still operates in China since users who downloaded the app before July's ban have access, and the company insists that it maintains the normal operations globally. But hundreds of apps are racing to take advantage of Didi's struggles and chip away at its market, led by aggressively expanding advertising and offering steep discounts. Or the Didi rival Meituan, for example, revived its standalone ride-hailing app after Didi was removed from stores, offered coupons to new users, and exempt new drivers from commission fees for a week. Other services backed by Alibaba and Geely Auto also advertised cash incentives or coupons. This is cutthroat market, said two of Sino Auto Insight. Everyone wants to get into this multi-billion industry, including traditional car manufacturers. Hundreds of rivals are trying to grab market share away from Didi, offering major discounts and spending lots of money on advertising. Still, Chu said the rivals are unlikely to threaten Didi's dominance entirely. He pointed out Didi has spent tens of billions to acquire customers, and that drive ride-hailing a tough business to tackle without a lot of financing, since customers aren't typically loyal to a brand if someone else can undercut their prices. Initial government data suggested that Didi's existing business didn't take a hit after the ban, even if it couldn't register new users. The company processed 13% more orders in July than it did in June, according to China's Ministry of Transport. The government just wants a healthier market, not killing Didi, Chu said, adding that he expected Didi to survive, albeit with a less bold expansion plan. Caffrey, the Heinrich Foundation research fellow, was less optimistic about Didi's future, particularly for as long as it keeps trading in the United States. Part of it could be nationalized, he said. Beijing will also actively fund the smaller competitors to even out the market and more easily exert control over the main players. The longer it stays listed on the US market, he added, the more ire it will draw from Beijing.